So now,
This is our scenario
the discussion
number 1,
proceeds with
and this is our scenario
the simple
number 2.
tenses.
Scenario
Before I
number
go
1
into the details of the simple tenses, let me float this question first. What is a verb? What is a verb? Jonard.
Very good. Next.
Action words.
Sorry.
Action words.
A verb is an action word.
So yan.
Allow me to say, Jonard, that definition is partially complete. It's partially complete. Why? What about the word is? Is. The word are. The word am. Are these words verbs, Kira?
If we all together traveled for 750 miles.
No,
Are is am.
And from point B to point C,
they are helping verbs.
They are helping.
the distance traveled is
Again, they are.
750
They are
miles.
helping verbs.
But are they verbs?
Now,
They are.
someone share
But if we go to the definition given by Jonard earlier, do they show any action?
one by one na lang.
They don't. But they are verbs. Which means, again, the answer given by Jonard is partially correct. That's just one half of the complete definition of what a verb is. Verbs denote or show actions.
For you to
At the
have
same time, there are also verbs that express
it from
conditions
scenario number 1.
or states of
After
being.
that, scenario number
Again,
2.
verbs are action words a verb is an action word or a word that expresses a condition or a state of being. And then verbs have properties.
Go.
What are the properties of verbs? I'll just properties of verbs. First and foremost, verbs have number. In terms of number, it could be singular and plural. Verbs also have tenses.
You are giving me
And then there are only 3 tenses of verbs. You have present,
So everyone will get
past,
Asan kuha mo na tayo?
and future.
Yes, dali.
Another property is that verbs have aspects. And there are 4 aspects of verbs. It could be simple, perfect, progressive, or a combination of the two, perfect,
Ayos ang substitution.
progressive.
Kini.
Another property of verbs, they also have voices. It could be active or passive. One more property of verbs, they can also have moods. It could be indicative. Indicative. It could be imperative. It could be subjunctive. And the last one, it could be infinitive. So those are the 5 properties of verbs. I know I've mentioned plenty of terms, but for this afternoon, I'd like us to focus on the combination of tenses and aspects. When we say aspects of verbs, these aspects would tell us of the nature of the occurrence of actions. Meaning, did they just happen? Are they continuously happening? Have they been completed? Those are the aspects of a verb that we should try to consider. And then, each of these aspects can actually be paired with the 3 tenses. To start then, we have the simple tenses. The first simple tense that we have is the simple. The label is number 1. Simple present. What's found in your module? What's the first tense that appears there? Simple past? I hope you won't find it wrong. I hope you'll find it all right if I go with the simple present tense. I'll just start with this. The simple present tense. There are three possible scenarios where the simple present tense is used. First, the simple present tense is used when we describe facts and habits. Meaning, this is a kind of tense that tells us of what's usually going on, habitually being done, and a statement that cannot anymore be changed. That's why it's a fact. For instance, if we talk of where the sun rises and where it sets, is that a fact? Will that lead us to a fact, Angel? If we talk of where the sun rises and where it sets.
Yes.
Correct. That's a fact. If we talk of the Philippines being an archipelago, is that a fact, Chloe? It is. If we talk of the province of Bohol being found or situated in the central Visayan region, is that a fact? I'd like to ask Janessa, is that a fact? It is. And so, these are statements that we cannot change anymore because these ideas are truthful and in fact widely acceptable, making them factual. Second, the habits. If something is done habitually or something is repeatedly done, that's using the simple present tense. Another reason of using the simple present tense, when there is a scheduled event in the future, meaning it's already quite fixed that something is really going to happen at some time in the future. Sir, that's in the future. Why is it in the simple present tense? The idea there is it does not happen just randomly. It is a scheduled event. So long before it had happened, it is already known that that event will really take place. Take note, in the present time, the event is already known to take place. It's just that it won't happen in the present time. It will happen still in the future. Another reason why we use the simple present tense. The simple present tense is used in relation to telling stories to make whosoever is listening to you feel more engaged and part of the storytelling that you are doing. Instead of narrating stories in the past form, it's better to make it appear in the present tense. For example, instead of saying, Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water, better do it as Jack and Jill decide to go up the hill. One day, Jack and Jill go up a particular hill, climb a hill, and then Jill died. The narration is better appreciated, made more engaging if spoken in the simple present tense. We'll go back to those functions later on. It's important that at least we've already mentioned when to use the simple present tense, but this time, allow me to emphasize how we form a simple present verb. The simple present tense depends on the number of the verb. That's why I mentioned number earlier. Again, number is one property of verbs, and number is manifested so much by the simple present tense. There are, of course, other tenses out there that mention the number property of verbs, but for the simple tenses, the simple present tense really points out, really specialized, really gives focus on the number of verbs as a good determinant. If we consider number of verbs, we should have the singular verb and the plural verb. The singular verb, let me start with the plural verb. The plural verb is formed, the plural verb is the base form of the verb. Plural verb is the base form of the verb. The base form of the verb is the form that is not inflected at all. When we say that a form is not inflected, that means that form is not added with any letter. That's why it's not inflected. No letter is added to it. It retains its original form. No extra letter, no extra character. The verb is indeed then in its plural number. Examples. You have the verb type,
Okay, start analyzing the problem.
enumerate,
I want you to solve it in your system.
dictate, scan, submerge.
Let's do the problem then.
All of these 5 are just few of the many plural verbs in the simple present tense. And again, if you look at all of them, there's no added letter to any of these words. They are not inflected, they're in the base form, and so they're expressed in the plural form under the simple present tense. What about the singular verb? The singular verb is inflected. The inflection is done by adding an S or ES to the base verb. That's how we make singular verbs. We add an S, we add an ES to the base verb. This kind of procedure is different from nouns. If we go back to nouns, the singular noun is not inflected, meaning the singular noun does not have any extra letter or character. The plural noun the plural noun involves an inflection where a character is added, or in fact, at some point, there are plural nouns which are changed in spelling, while a few would retain their spelling even in the plural number. Going back to verbs, the singular verb is what we add with an S or with an ES. Even if it's change Y to I and add ES, the concept still remains the same. We are adding an ES. Example, let me use the previous verbs. Types, enumerates, dictates, scans, submerges. See, look at what we did here. We added an S. What about the ES? Teaches, approaches. What other? Preaches. So we added an ES there to form the singular form of the verb. Sir, why are you talking of singular and plural verbs? It cannot really be helped. Whenever we talk of verbs, numbers, the number property cannot really be helped but being talked about, because what supposedly comes after our knowledge of verbs is we use verbs in a sentence such that the sentence contains a subject and a verb that agree in number. If you know that your subject is singular, your verb should also be singular. If the subject turns out to be plural, then the verb should also be plural. And the structure of the verbs matter. How they are formed helps determine their number.
What is the time of travel
Question.
of the airplane? The plane.
Any question? Take note, we haven't made any sentence yet.
Time of travel of the train. Very good. Where did you get the three? This one.
It's all right, Mark. It's all right, Mark.
Given the race, ano siya ang airplane?
Any
Time of
question?
travel niya is equal to three. Given sa
Let's try to have sentences.
train. Ang time of travel niya is equal to
Where does the sun rise? Thomas.
apat silang dua. Yeah? Until the train and the plane.
Thomas,
What's the question, sir?
where does the sun rise?
Depende rin mo ng airplane.
Verse.
There is a
Huh?
ito. And
Rise.
then, because the other
Yes, where does the sun rise?
point is their travel, they met
Hello,
after 3 hours.
what is this? The sun rises.
Let's go to the speed. What is the speed of the plane?
Uy. Kin, where does the sun rise?
This one, huh? The plane is 330 miles per hour faster than the
Oh my God.
train. So who in this
Angel is
scenario
smiling at you.
refers his speed or his
Jeremiah, where does the sun rise?
the train? So
In the east.
East people. In what planet are you living right now? Why can you not tell me where the sun rises from?
plane is
The sun rises in the east. Consider that statement.
because the
Earlier, I asked the question. I think it was Angel who even answered it.
if this
Is the information about where the sun rises and sets a factual statement? Angel's answer is yes. It's a fact. And so the simple present verb is used. If you say the sun rose in the east, that means that today it did not. Tomorrow it won't. Because all of those happened in the past. And that's not what's going on. The fact remains that the sun rises in the east.
Someone gives me the
Another statement. The Philippines is an archipelago. I think it was to Chloe that I asked this, whether this is a fact. The Philippines is an archipelago. You look at the verb is. Sir, the verb is. We didn't add an S or an ES to it. For be verbs, people, for be verbs, there are
distance travel.
5 common be verbs. Is, are, and am, simple present. Was and were, past.
Start solving the problem.
Just on their own, just is, are, and am, simple present. Was and were, simple past.
Airplane.
I think it was Kira earlier who said,
After finding for x, we need to add 3
for a while.
to get the speed of the airplane. Go. Solve the problem.
I think it was Kira earlier who said that is and are helping verbs. They only, this is a reminder to everybody, is and are
You have
function as helping verbs, or basically your be verbs function as helping verbs only when they are paired with a main verb. Meaning, for example, is laughing. Is there is a helping verb. Laughing is a main verb.
Again, this is
Was
1 to 10.
taken.
Go.
Was helping verb. Taken main verb. So 2 kinds of verbs are involved. But without a helping verb, they just are verbs. Be verbs. Auxiliary verbs. In fact, like this of number 2. The Philippines is an archipelago. It's an auxiliary verb, a linking verb, not a helping verb. Is this a fact, Janessa? The Philippines is an archipelago. Is it a fact?
Yes.
It is. Imagine if you change that to was. The Philippines was an archipelago. That means that after the statement was said, the Philippines, the islands of the Philippines suddenly moved so that the Philippines won't anymore be an archipelago. If you also say the Philippines will be an archipelago, wait, what does that mean? Something will happen tomorrow and it's different from today. So by tomorrow, the islands will start moving so that altogether they will not create an archipelago, but perhaps just one landmass. So it won't make sense. That is why for these facts, we put them in the simple present tense. Another statement regarding habits. Let's try this. I study my lessons every day. Study. All the more every day. Never mind every day. Let's just look at the word study. I study my lessons every day. Is this a statement that shows a habitual practice of someone, Rafael?
Yes, sir.
What's the habit of the person in sentence number 3?
Study.
See? The act of studying is habitually done. That is why the verb is expressed in the simple present tense. If it were stated as, I studied my lessons, that means that right after saying it, the studying is not anymore done. If you state it as, I will study my lessons, at the onset that the statement was said, no studying was done. And studying is to be done still on a schedule, on a particular time in the future. Let's have this. We celebrate Christmas on December 25. Is this happening on a yearly basis? Does this happen every year, Gabriel? Correct. Therefore, the act becomes a habit. The act becomes habitual, repeated, repetitive. And so the simple present tense makes sense to be used in this statement. Now, do we have any question regarding the simple present tense?
What is the speed of the plane?
If I look at your, wait. Grade 8, there is something in your module at the back. Is there someone from this class who availed of the soft copy? If someone from this class availed of the soft copy, there is something in your module, in the soft copy module, that cannot be found. Sorry. There's something in the hard copy module that cannot be found in the soft copy. How many FTs do you have there in the hard copy, Angel? It ended with FT7.
Is equal to 1,000.
57, sir.
FT7. How many copies do you have, Janessa? How many FTs do you have, Janessa?
Transpose 990 to the other side.
7.
1,500 equals rather minus
Wait.
990. Now,
Is there a part in your module, Janessa, that requires you to construct meaningful sentences in every simple tense?
Very good. 510
That's the last FT, right?
So
Construct 3 meaningful sentences in every tense, in every simple tense. Janessa, that's what has been added. Ma'am Zen actually added that to the module. She opted that students would really try to construct sentences. Maybe you can ask your classmates, to those who have availed of the soft copy, maybe you can ask your classmates later on for the specific instructions found for the last FT. Questions regarding the simple present tense? Please, any question?
Plus 330
If there's none for now, I'll proceed with a simple past tense. Just like our lesson for participles last week, the simple past tense can be traced to the verb being regular and irregular. The regular simple past tense
500 miles, 415, 85,
this is formed by adding a D or an ED, the base verb. Again, we add a D or an ED to the base verb. For example, we have approach. Let's use approach. Its simple past form is approached. Or we have handle. Simple past form is handled. For approach, we added an ED. For handle, we added a D. Try. We change Y to I and add ED. Tried. Fry. We change Y to I and add ED. Fried. Copy. We change Y to I and add ED. Encode. We add a D. Encoded. So what we did there for the regular simple past tense is to add a D or an ED. What about the irregular past tense? The irregular simple past tense is formed in two possible ways. First option, we change the spelling of the verb. Or second option, we retain the spelling of the verb. Two things can possibly happen. For the irregular verb, change to its simple past form, the spelling may change. Or the other possibility, the spelling doesn't change at all. For example, our base verb is teach. Its simple past form is taught. Sorry, I'll place them beside each other. Teach, taught. Sing, it turns to sang. Ring turns to rang. Bring, this reminds me of some. Bring turns to brought. Seek turns to sought. So look at what had happened to the words. They've been changed in their spelling so as to form the simple past verb. But here's option B. We don't change anything at all. Like hit remains to be hit. Put remains to be put. Cut remains to be cut. Set remains to be set. It's not hitted, it's not putted, not cutted, nor setted. The simple past form of those four verbs out of the many remain to be the same if compared to the original base verb or base form of those verbs. When do we use then the simple past form of the verb or the simple past tense? We use the simple past tense as there was an activity that got completed or that had happened in the past. Something happened in the past. And so the verb is expressed also in the simple past form. In terms of number, I did mention it earlier. If you look at these simple past verbs, can we see an S or an ES being added? We can't. So not much with this structure will we be able to determine the number of the verb. For example, let's have a sentence. The girl watered the plants. If you look at the word watered, regular, irregular. Let's start with that. Watered, regular, irregular. Angel.
Regular.
Correct. It's a regular word. What is the base form of our verb? Base verb is water. To form it into its past form, simple past form, we added an ed. And so it has become watered. What is the number of watered in this sentence, Jeremiah?
Singular.
It's actually singular. How did Jeremiah know that it's singular? What told you, Jeremiah, that the number of watered is singular?
Girl.
Correct. In reference to the subject, which is girl. And in number, girl is singular as well. However, if you just look at the word watered, just the word watered alone, can we see the number of the verb? Putting aside the subject, just our attention focusing on the word watered, on the verb expressed in the simple past form. Is it
So far,
reflective of a number?
followed by Shania.
Unfortunately, it's not. Jeremiah knew that the number is singular because of the subject, and that's correct. But without the subject, no one would know what the number is of water.
Exactly 36 miles.
And what is the idea behind this statement? What's the concept behind this statement? There's a girl who did an act of watering the plants. Is this act of watering the plants done now?
So illustration tells us
It's
that
not.
the distance
When was it done? In the past.
from the family is
Sometimes, what would help us determine the tense of the verb are adverbs of time that writers use.
for 9 hours.
There are others who would make use of adverbs of time and they create sentences that go, for example,
I will travel for an additional of 6 hours.
Mary left early last night.
As started and the end point is
Last night would tell you that something happened on a time in the past. It's last night. It won't make sense if your statement is Mary leaves early last night. Leaves, simple present. Last night, a past adverb. Past adverb of time. Incorrect, illogical. It would also not make any sense if your statement is Mary will leave early last night. Still doesn't sound right. Will tell will is a signal that something is still going to happen. It's still to happen in the future. Yet last night expresses a time in the past. Illogical. And so we use the verb left. The simple past form of the verb leave. And again, on its own, the word left, just the word left on its own, cannot convey any particular number. But because of the name of Mary being the subject of the sentence, we are given the idea that the verb is also a singular verb. But if not, without the subject, that verb remains to have an unknown number. Different from the present verbs. For example, I'll try putting a verb. I'll try putting a verb. Plural singular. Chloe.
A bicycle
Yes.
leaves Chicago heading east with a speed
Chloe?
of 12 miles an hour. 2 hours later, a second bicycle leaves the same point.
I don't know. I cannot hear anything. Sorry.
Chicago heading east of the same direction, but at
Okay,
a faster
is it me
speed
or-
of 15 miles an hour. How long will it take for the second bicycle to overtake the first bicycle?
If it's singular, you nod your head. If it's plural, you shake your head sideways. Go. Plural or singular?
The same point.
What is this again? Plural? Singular. What is this? I forgot. What does this mean? Singular?
The second bicycle overtakes the first bicycle.
You look at perish. Is it? You look at the way to form singular plural verbs. Thomas, perish, plural, singular.
Plural.
Plural, correct. It's not inflected. It's not added with any letter. And look, is there a subject that we have paired with the word perish? There's none. But because of the present tense, the simple present tense, we can then right away determine the number of the verb perish. This one, plural, singular, Gabriel.
Or rather, the second bicycle to start is
Singular.
Correct. It's singular.
first bicycle.
Two letters have been added here. You have ES. The letters ES would tell you that the verb in the simple present tense is expressed in singular number without any subject. Because of the simple present tense, we could determine the number of the verb. Compared to the word held. What's the number of held, Angel?
After 2 hours,
Singular.
Held?
for another
What is held, by the way? What is held?
hours,
Jeremiah, what is held?
the second bicycle
Past.
traveled
Past form of what verb?
Hold.
Hold, correct. So now I'll go back to Angel. What's the number of held, Angel?
First bicycle here. This is the second bicycle here. Nakita niyo ang scenario class.
Plural.
Nauna si first bicycle of Gaga for
Plural?
2 hours. After the
Simple
second
past.
hour, the second
On
bicycle
its own,
of
can a verb be determined in terms of its number? Can we, on its own, can the simple past verb's number be identified?
as they traveled both
Cannot. So the number of held here is unknown.
catches up to the
Only
first
when
bicycle.
used in a sentence will we know what the number of held
And
is.
that catching up means
For example,
sukat sa second bicycle with 15 miles per hour siya, and the first
she held my
bicycle
hands.
overtakes the first bicycle.
Here, held becomes, Angel, what's the number of held in this sentence?
Singular.
What made you say that it's singular?
She.
Because of she, correct. There's another one.
Take for the car to overtake the first bicycle to overtake the second bicycle. I mean, how long would you
They held hands while crossing the street.
on the text?
Same verb, the same verb.
Class, what is our
But what's the number of held, Jeremiah?
Look at this.
Plural.
Plural. Because of the word
How will we draw
They.
they. See, you look at held. Held may be plural or singular depending on whatever subject goes with it or is paired with it. Because the subject is what determines, for the simple past verb, because the subject determines the number of the verb, simple past verbs don't necessarily have a number right away. Any question? By the way, I'd like to also point out, for the discussion that we are doing here, we are in the active voice. We are all in the active voice. This is in the premise of the active voice. If there's someone who will find this video recording soon, I'd like to inform my viewers that our discussion are in the active voice. Because one of my viewers might unsubscribe. I do not want anybody to unsubscribe because of the impression that, "Hala, what about the passive voice?" For now, this discussion is about the active voice. A verb actually has 12 forms in the active voice and 12 forms in the passive voice. Therefore, a verb has 24 verb conjugations. A verb can be conjugated 24 times. 12 for the active voice and another 12 for the passive voice. We'll do the verb conjugations later. Let's now proceed with a simple future tense. The simple future tense's function is for giving information regarding an action that will occur in the future. And in here, we'll make use of two possible modals. We get to choose between will or shall, and then we pair that with a base verb. That's the basic formula for the simple future verb. Again, will or shall plus the base verb. Just choose one between the two. You don't have to write will or shall when I ask you to answer something in the ST or in the FT. Just choose one between the two. For example, our base verb is hop. In the simple future tense, it could be will hop. In the simple future tense, it could also be shall hop. Offer will, sorry, will offer. It can also be shall offer. Print will print. Shall print. The two just differs in terms of the words will and shall differ in terms of the carried weight or obligation. Yes, they differ in terms of the weight or obligation. Between the two, which one sounded more obligatory? Jeremiah, which one carries more of an obligation?
Shall.
It's actually shall. Remember what MacArthur said? He said, I shall return. That statement is more than a promise. And so he obligated himself to really return. He did come back. If girls, sooner or later you'll reach an age where someone will propose for marriage. If someone says, will you marry me? You're not obliged to say yes. It's different when the question is, shall you marry me? Because that does not leave you with any other option, but just a yes as an answer. But if the question is, will you marry me? There's of course that option of turning down the proposal. Because marriage proposals are not compulsory. It's not obligated. If someone is not ready, then why should the person be forced into marriage? And so the question floats with the word will, not with the word shall. If someone says, I will go to school with you, be ready of the possibility that that person won't go with you to school. But if the person says, I shall go to school with you, expect that that person will really be with you in going to school. See the difference? But both are expressing actions for the future. For something to happen still in the future. For example, we will go to church this Sunday. That means that there's a group of persons who on Sunday will go to church. They'll do a particular action of going to church comes a particular day of the week. On that particular day of the week. Another one.
Time here is unknown, while time here is X or 2. The second versicle Bedugan sila start. Bali mo yung starting point ni first bicycle, while the second bicycle started here. Until such time na nakaabot siya ni first bicycle. At
The lady shall answer this problem without any help from us. So in that sentence, there's a lady who's going to do the act of answering the problem in the future, and that person won't ask for any help from us. Has the answering happened already? Not yet. Is the answering of the problem happening in the present time? No. The answering of the problem is going to happen still in the future. It's about to it's still to happen. Questions regarding the simple present tense? Any question? While we still have 4 minutes to spare before 3:30, any question? Please ask, people. Please ask. Of the 21 souls who are with me this afternoon, do we have any question?
Okay, ako na lang.
Okay, I'll type a sentence. I'll call someone to tell me of the tense of the verb in that sentence.
Kung sa kakasaon na travel ni second bicycle. The distance traveled by the first bicycle is just basically equal to the distance traveled by the second bicycle. And that is just our algorithm.
During the meeting, the landlord expressed his willingness to be the president. What is the tense of the verb? You only have 3 options here: simple past, simple present, simple future. What is the tense? I'd like to ask Shamil.
Then 27.
Simple past tense.
Correct. Simple past tense. What is the verb there, Shamil?
Expressed.
Expressed. Tense is simple past. Question number 2. I'll use your names, ha? Just don't be surprised if I'll use your names.
Say this is bicycle 1. Esugod dire. Speed ni bicycle 1 is 12. For 2 hours with a speed of 12, unsa may nadagan ni nga distance? 24 miles. Tama? After such time, nag-travel siya for X number of
Chloe paints well anything that you ask her to make. What is the verb of the sentence? What is the tense of the verb? I'd like to ask Lian.
15. Kini siya 15x.
Paints.
Paints, correct. What is the tense of paints?
So, yun yung isang sulfon, distance traveled by
Present.
Again?
The distance traveled by bicycle. So, di ba kinilaline?
Complete answer with the aspect.
Simple
Distance
present.
from
Correct.
bicycle number 1 is speed times time. At the time is x plus 2. Distance of bicycle number 2,
So any questions so far?
speed times
Sir, in number 2, sir, there's another verb.
2 is 24.
That verb is
15
ask.
transpose
But take
by
note,
time.
our focus is the verb of the sentence. What about ask, sir? Ask is the verb of your dependent clause. Remember your favorite lesson so far? Sentence structures.
So 15 and 12. Divide both
That's
sides by
a complex sentence,
4 is equal to
right? Chloe paints anything, paints well anything.
in after 8
Anything is described by the adjective clause that you ask her to make. We have an adjective clause, we have a dependent clause added to an independent clause, 1 in count for each. And so we have a complex sentence. Don't forget that because I know right now that you have learned to love sentence structures. Any question regarding tenses, regarding the simple tenses of verbs?
16 times 8. Kailangan.
If there's none, I look forward to seeing you on Thursday with the answers you provided in the FTs. Goodbye and thank you, grade 8.
A travel with bicycle.
Goodbye.
Goodbye and thank you,
Sir
Sir
Kim.
Sim.